Hello, and welcome to Wellness with John. I'm John Peters. I'm a therapist who's worked with thousands of patients over the last 25 years, and this channel is resources to help you lower your stress and thrive. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about grief after loss of a pet. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about grief after loss of a pet because this is a common issue given how many of us are pet owners. And it's also an issue that comes up for us therapists because people in therapy in general lose pets, but also people come to therapy sometimes with questions about how to grieve after the loss of a pet. So, if you've lost a pet before or have recently lost a pet, this is going to make a lot of sense to you. But I'm going to talk about just a few different issues related to adjustment after losing a pet. The number one question people have about grief is, am I crazy for grieving the loss of a pet? Sometimes people are surprised at their grief reaction and how strong it is and the qualities of it. And they might not have expected to be impacted as strongly as they are. But, losing a pet can cause a grief reaction every bit as strong and complicated as losing a person in your life. So you're probably not crazy if you're grieving. It causes the full range of emotions. And, are all the same adjustments there as when we lose a person or adjust to another type of major change in our life? Maybe not, but all grief is unique to the context. And there's no reason to think that losing a pet is somehow going to spare us of the extreme emotional challenges and challenges of adjustment to losing a pet. So, answer number one, no, you are not crazy for having a grief reaction, anticipating or during or after loss of a pet. Um, Another thing is that, is related to that is the grief process the same? So I just recently in the last video I posted, I talked about the stage model and how that's inadequate and how we think about grief as a set of tasks. And the short answer is yes, in terms of coping with the realization of an adjustment to the loss of a pet. Those tasks are every bit the same because, on the practical level, again, the tasks of adjustment have to do with the actual situation and what you actually need to do to adjust. But, in terms of the conceptual model, it's the same. Grief is the same when you lose a pet as when you face a major change or loss of another type in your life. And one thing that comes up, though, I think that is particular to loss of a pet, and this is similar to people who face complicated grief and unusual situations that are just less conventional, where the grief reaction happens. And that is that people sometimes think, well, who can I talk to about this? Because grief in general is a very individual, private thing that we sometimes share through mourning rituals. We share with those who are closest to us. We share in therapy. But because it's something that is so private and that we keep private, often for good reasons when we're going through a grief process, part of what that means is that when we look out into our social life, through our life, we're not seeing other people's grief processes because they are keeping it private. And part of what that means is that then when it lands on us, we can feel especially, blindsided, bowled over, and like we might be crazy because we don't have that experience of others to calibrate. And I think this is especially true of grief of pets because people do think it's kind of crazy and people do hide it. I once had a patient who came to see me because she had a cat that she had owned for 22 years. And I didn't know cats live that long. I'm a dog owner myself. But the cat was with her for 22 years, apparently, and died. And she was going through this really strong grief process. But she felt crazy because she thought, I shouldn't be grieving this strongly for a cat, not like a person. And she had this sense that she couldn't share it even with her closest friends, which is why, appropriately, she decided, well, who can I share that kind of stuff with? I'll go hire a therapist. It's what we do. But, why was she talking to me? Because she thought she couldn't talk to her friends about it. So, obviously, I'm not suggesting that you have a wide open filter and have no discernment about who to talk to, but you can talk to your friends about feeling angry, sad, upset, having trouble with losing a pet. It's normal. Your friends have felt it too, very likely, and can understand it. So, you can talk to a therapist about it, certainly, but just know that you're not crazy and it's not unusual. And talking to someone close to you and sharing with them how troubling it is for you to have lost your pet is absolutely appropriate. One special challenge that pet owners face around a pet loss is dealing with the decision to euthanize a pet, put a pet down. And I know that a lot of vets are very good at guiding people through that process, but it can be overwhelming to confront and to experience and face. One of my dogs that I had, Rama was his name, Chocolate Lab, he had had cancer and we'd treated it and it had gone into remission. But, there was this day where I took him to the vet because it looked like this cancer had come back. And the vet said, yeah, it's come back. And based on my evaluation, I think he probably only has about 2 to 3 weeks to live. And we can treat it. We can give him palliative care, but there's nothing we can do to cure this. And he's probably going to go down and you need to make the decision to euthanize him. And I said, okay, I'll think about how we're going to do that. I carried him back out to the car and I got in the car. I'm going to tear up when I talk about this. I had to pull over 2 blocks down the road because I was sobbing so strongly, right? So, pardon me. This has been years and it's popped back up, but you can see a decade and a half after Rama died, it comes back to us. I'll share that with you, and I'm demonstrating it, obviously. But it hit me so hard, I couldn't drive because I couldn't see. I was crying so hard, so I had to sit there and wait until my sobbing subsided to get home. But luckily for me, I wasn't alone in facing that decision. I had others in my life to kind of talk through that and to feel like I not only had emotional support for making the decision, but that those in Rama's life also were sharing the burden of that decision. So one thing I would say is, it is very appropriate and prudent often to actually engage with like someone close to you to talk through the decision to euthanize your pet, because part of what that means is it doesn't all sit on you. Because a common issue later, after the pet has gone, is to second guess that and to think, did I make the right decision? Did I do it in the correct way? And when you have an extra brain or two helping you think through that, that helps you lower the chance of you getting into a bunch of what if kind of guilt later. And it also means you're not the only one who bears 100% of that decision to decide to euthanize. The other thing about losing a pet, and vets sometimes help with this part too, is what's the right thing to do to memorialize a pet? Do we bury the pet? Do we bury ashes? Do we do something with ashes? And again, like a person, everything's on the table. And so, whatever is right for you is going to be the right thing to do. In the case of Rama, that dog, he was such a lovable dog and he had so many friends in the world because he was a dog I took with me out in the world a lot. So he was a part of my social world and all my friends and family were very close to him too. And we had a service for Rama and we invited whoever was close to the dog to come and we gathered around and everybody shared what a cool dog he was and how sad it was to lose him. So we had a little service like that. So what anything's fair game that seems right to you. Again, talking to people close to you to craft that if it seems confusing is a good idea. One question that comes up is, should I get another pet to replace the pet I lost? And one issue with that is, in general, we therapists tend to recommend that people wait a little bit because there is that intense period of dealing with the loss. And, is it wrong to start thinking ahead to getting a new pet? No, not really. But in terms of actually getting the new pet, letting the extreme part of the early intensity of your grief kind of play itself out, and you getting good support and working through that is better. There's no magic time frame like wait 6 months and then that's the time. But for some people, a month or two later, it's going to seem right. For some people, it might be longer, right? But I would wait a little bit and not run out the next day and try to cover your grief by replacing your pet. The other thing is that if you have other pets, your other pets may seem to have a grief reaction too, because pets get attached to each other. And even pets that are different, like cats and dogs, right, can be used to each other and then have that sense of loss when the pet is no longer in the home and have their own process. But one thing to think about that is when you're ready to replace the pet with a new pet and have a new pet that's going to fit with your idea of what the new pet should be, that may not fit with your other pet's idea about it. And so they may not be 100% on board and as happy about the introduction of a new pet in all the same ways that you are. So just think about it as if the other pet hadn't been gone and you introduced a new pet, all the same issues will apply in terms of your existing pets dealing with the introduction of the new member of the household. So think about that just also in terms of just the logistics of the right pet to add and when and how. Another question that comes up is, should we tell children, should we be honest with children about like the fact that a dog is going to die or a pet's going to die or we're going to put a pet down? And in general, yes, even young children as young as, the age of 3 and 4 and 5, actually, they often learn about the concept of death through pet loss first. That's often how a lot of people learn about the concept of death. And be honest with them, yes, Fido did die and is not coming back. And, you can explain that in straightforward ways to your child. That's very appropriate. And they may have their own grief reaction that's not necessarily exactly the same as yours, right? But you can give them support. And if you're really confused about whether they're coping with it, okay, talk to a child therapist to get a consult about that as well. So another one is just, should we memorialize a pet by having something in the home, like a picture? And again, that's fine. That's not necessarily going to disturb your kids. I mean, if it proves especially disturbing, you can kind of, again, gauge that in terms of how you want to do that. But like in the case of that dog Rama I was talking about earlier, he had been a part of my daughter's life since she was born because we had Rama before she was born. And when Rama died, she went and found a picture of him and put it on our personal altar in our house, which was the place where we put things that are special in our lives. And so to memorialize him, and part of her grieving process at the time was to say, I'm going to go put a picture of Rama on that altar, and we'll keep it on the altar until we decide to change that. So, again, you do your mourning however you choose to do it and how it fits with what you want to do and what other members of your family are going to do. So my main point here is you're not crazy. If you're really worried that you're frankly crazy or you're thin on support, talk to a therapist because we can help with that kind of thing. But, in my 25 years of practice, Nobody, zero patients who have come in to thinking that they're crazy because they're grieving a pet have I thought they were crazy. That all of that grief has looked absolutely normal. But I do understand that it is crazy making, both in that it may feel surprising and unusual and not okay, and it may be confusing in terms of how to sort through it, and it may be surprising in its strength and how much it affects you and debilitates you. But just know that that is normal. And I encourage you to get good support, and you're going to be okay. And you will go on. You might check out my other video on grief stages and tasks in general. That might help you also a little bit in your grieving process. And watch the channel too. I'm going to put some more videos on here on the topic of grief in the near future, right? So if you like this kind of content, feel free to like and share and comment and subscribe, and I will see you soon.